often, assistance from the public is the only way some FBI mysteries can ever be solved. Even in unsolved cases where evidence has been left behind, it takes the right person to come forward with information for investigators to finally crack the case. Number 5. No matter how old a case is, there's always hope that new attention might finally crack it. That's what the family of Diana Ault hoped for after the FBI reopened her case in 2022. Diana passed away in 1994 after a chilling attack that took place with her 2 small children nearby. The police have never been able to identify a suspect in this case, which is now an FBI file. At the time, Diana was 26 years old and working as a paralegal. She had plans to go back to school to study law. Her father had recently offered to pay a wage so that she could still be a part of her children's lives while studying. It was an offer Diana had never gotten the chance to take him up on. The creepy mystery took place at Diana's home in Independence, Missouri, on January 31st, 1994. The police were first alerted to the case when passers-by reported a red Pontiac Grand Prix abandoned in a church parking lot. There was a weapon inside as well as shell casings. Neighbors reported seeing 2 individuals in the car and said they had seen an unidentified person running through a field beside the church. The police identified the owner as Diana and went to her home to check on her. That was when they located her body in the front hallway of the home. Diana's 4-year-old son informed police that someone had attacked his mother before hiding the child in a closet. He then drove off in Diana's car. Another young child was also in the building unharmed. The crime shocked Diana's family and friends, who could think of no reason why anybody would attack her in such a way. It seemed to have been a swift crime with only 2 bullet wounds. No suspects have ever been identified in the case, but the FBI agents hope reopening the case will lead to more tips. There's also a theory that the crime may have been connected to the 1989 passing of Sarah De Leon, who was attacked with a bladed object on December 29th and left near train tracks in Kansas City. Investigators in that case believe a potential suspect may have known both victims. Anybody with information on this case, or any other case in this video, can contact the FBI at 1-800-225-5324. Number 4. 21 years ago, a lone criminal walked into the office of an armored car company in Vermont and walked away with $1.9 million. It was the largest theft in the state's history and remains a creepy mystery to this day. It was around 6 a.m. on January 31st, 2002. Snow still covered the ground in Rutland, Vermont. One of the 2 guards on duty at the Berkshire Armored Car Company showed up for work, expecting another ordinary day. As he waited for his coworker to show up, another man entered the building. He was white, about 5 foot 10 inches tall, and wore a mask. He brandished a weapon and spoke with a distinct nasally New York accent. The first guard was tied up and had no chance to warn anybody else about the robbery before the next guard arrived. That guard too was tied up. No other thieves showed up, and it looked like the criminal was working alone. Both guards had half of the combination to the building's safe and handed it over when threatened by the thief. He then loaded 30 bags of money into a stolen cleaning van and left. The crime was over by 6:30 a.m. This wasn't the first time the Berkshire Armored Car Company had been robbed, but it was by far the most costly heist it had ever suffered. The local police and FBI agents immediately began working on the case, but there were few clues to go on. There was no CCTV available in the office, and the guards were only able to provide a basic description of the thief. The stolen van was located not far from the robbery site, but the money and the thief were both gone. The FBI case started looking at potential suspects and conducted countless interviews. Strangely, many who worked in the company pointed out potential suspects had been missed. A company manager who moved to Arizona not long after the thief remarked that nobody came to talk to him. It seemed likely that whoever was behind this strange case had insider knowledge. A number of previous robberies at the company involved a man on the inside, but this time no suspect was ever identified. The leads eventually dried up, and the FBI investigators were left with nowhere else to turn. Once the statute of limitations on the case had passed, the FBI officially closed the case, but it remains unsolved to this day. Number 3. In just 60 seconds, a gang of thieves would get away with more than $1 million in a perfectly performed armored truck heist. More than 30 years later, this FBI case has gone cold. The gang of thieves committed at least 3 robberies, but it was their second that solidified their place as a true crime legend. It was about 1 p.m. on April 19, 1989. An armored truck pulled up outside the First State Bank of Eden Prairie in Minnesota, as was routine. One of the guards got out of the van and began loading cash from the bank into the truck. Suddenly, 2 other vehicles appeared on the street. A car parked directly behind the van, and another van parked in front of it. 2 men in masks got out of the car and approached the guard at the back of the truck. They were heavily armed, but the guard did not immediately back down. He grabbed one of the guns, but couldn't get it out of the criminal's hands. He was quickly forced to the ground and made to stay there. At the same time, another criminal got out of the truck at the front of the operation. He placed a strange device in the hood of the armored truck. The driver couldn't see exactly what it was, but thought it was dangerous. In less than 60 seconds, the thieves at the back of the truck had taken all the money from the truck and moved it into their own vehicles. Then both the car and the getaway truck sped off, leaving the 2 guards unharmed but confused. Chasing after the thieves would have to wait until after the device at the front of the vehicle was removed. Law enforcement carefully removed the device with guide wires, only to discover it was actually harmless and had just been there to distract investigators. By the time the search began, the thieves had already switched vehicles and vanished without a trace. $1 million was stolen in the Eden Prairie heist. FBI investigators did not believe this was the gang's first heist. A similar device to that was placed in the truck had been used in Baltimore 3 years earlier. While the FBI agents and local law enforcement searched for clues that would let them identify any member of the group, the gang struck again. This time, they hit another armored truck in Burnsville, Minnesota. The 3 heists had earned the group a fair amount of infamy, and the unsolved crime appeared on Unsolved Mysteries in 1990. 2 months after the episode featuring the gang aired, another armored car robbery took place in Cheektowaga, New York, which the FBI believes may have been the work of this same gang. The case has never been solved. FBI investigators believe the group could have originated from anywhere in the country, but they were obviously professionals. If still alive today, the men are estimated to be in their late 50s or early 60s. Number 2. An unsolved FBI cold case from 2003 could soon be solved if the right person comes forward with information. The case is that of 20-year-old Megan McDonald, who lost her life in the early hours of March 13, 2003 under mysterious circumstances. Detectives investigating the case believe that they've identified the person responsible for the twisted crime, but are looking for more evidence in the case. The day of March 12th started out like any other. Megan worked a shift at the American Cafe in Wallkill, New York, a town she'd recently moved to from Middletown. After work, she stopped at a bank to take out some cash, then got ready for the evening. She planned to spend the evening with friends in Middletown, but stopped by a party on her way. Megan was something of a social butterfly and knew many of the people there. She stopped in her car outside and talked to the hosts, who encouraged her to come inside. She declined and told them about her plans. This may have been the decision that would lead to the disturbing crime taking place. Megan left the party, arriving at her friend's home at 7:30 p.m. They hung out and watched the TV show Friends until midnight. At that point, Megan left, saying that she was going home to sleep before work. But Megan didn't go straight home. Instead, she returned to the party. Again, she didn't go inside, but talked to friends outside. FBI investigators and law enforcement working the case believe that she picked up a passenger at this point, a male friend who rode in the front passenger seat of her car. Megan was next spotted at 12:30 p.m. by a resident of the Kensington Manor apartment complex in Wallkill. The resident had been trying to sleep when a car with loud music drove past. She looked outside to see a white Mercury Sable being closely followed by a dark-colored Honda Civic, which was the car making all the noise. the Mercury was later identified as Megan's car. The two cars drove past twice before disappearing into the night. It was 12 hours later when family and friends realized Megan was missing. She didn't show up for work and nobody could get in touch with her. On March 15th, her body was discovered in a secluded location off Bowser Road. Megan's car was located a few days later in the parking lot of Kensington Manor Apartments. It had been there since at least 8 a.m. on March 13th and looked like it had been parked erratically. FBI investigators believe the owner of the dark Honda was the person responsible for the case. They believe he may have been romantically involved with Megan at the time, but not many people knew about the relationship. Their theory is that Megan had wanted to end the relationship and brought a friend along for support. At some point, the suspect got into the back of Megan's car. They drove to a secluded spot where he attacked her. He then threatened the friend into silence. The friend passed away a few years later. Police have not named the suspect or the friend they believe that witnessed the crime, but have appealed for information from the public. According to local law enforcement and the FBI, the suspect was once extremely threatening, but that was no longer the case. People who may have once worried about coming forward could now do so safely. A $20,000 reward is also available for information leading to an arrest. Number 1. FBI investigators are seeking information in the mysterious case of Adrienne Salinas, who vanished on June 15, 2013. 2 months later, her body was discovered, but what happened to her was no more clear. Adrienne was a 19-year-old student living with friends in an apartment in Tempe, Arizona. On the night of June 14th, the group of teenagers were celebrating a friend's birthday party at the apartment. Among the guests was Adrienne's boyfriend, Francisco Arteaga. In the early hours of the following morning, while the party was in full swing, Adrienne and Francisco got into an argument, allegedly because she thought he was flirting with another woman at the party. The couple left the party at 2:30 a.m. to go to Francisco's apartment. The argument continued though, and Adrienne said that she wanted to return home. Francisco drove Adrienne partway home, and she arrived back at the party at 3:40 a.m. She didn't stay long though. After talking to her housemates, she got an overnight bag and left to go back to Francisco's apartment. Adrienne had been drinking, but she decided to drive her own car to her boyfriend's apartment. Just before 4 a.m., local police received a call about a car being driven erratically. The driver hit the median and damaged both tires on one side of the car. When the caller tried to talk to the driver, she just left. Adrienne continued driving a little way, but the tires were too damaged to continue. She eventually got out of the car. The FBI file on the case states Adrienne then returned to her own apartment again, but nobody saw her. She changed clothes and walked to a nearby convenience store. All the while, between 4:10 and 4:45 a.m., she had been texting Francisco, letting him know she was planning to come to his apartment and stay the night. At 4:53 a.m., she called a cab asking to be picked up from the AM/PM store. The taxi driver arrived 14 minutes later, but Adrienne was nowhere to be seen. He tried calling, but Adrienne's phone had been turned off. It would be another day before anybody reported Adrienne missing. June 16th was Father's Day, and she'd planned to spend it with her father. When he couldn't get a hold of her, he reported his daughter missing. Adrienne's car was located, but it didn't offer any clues as to what had happened after the accident. Francisco and the taxi driver were both interviewed by police and eventually ruled out as suspects. 2 months after Adrienne's disappearance, on August 6th, a man living in Apache Junction, Arizona, noticed a flock of vultures at the back of his property. There, in the wash, he found the remains of a young woman. DNA confirmed this was Adrienne. According to investigators on this cold case, Adrienne's body had been dumped elsewhere and washed into that location by a rainstorm. What caused her passing could not be determined, but the FBI investigators believe she met with foul play. 9 years on, the case remains unsolved. Anybody with information that could lead to this case being solved should contact the FBI at 1-800-225-5324 or the Tempe Police Department at 480-350-8311. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked this video, be sure to hit that like button. Also, don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell to keep up to date with all of our future uploads. But my name is Ty Knotts, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.